I want to see the security footage. All of it. Every camera. Right now. The TSA supervisor looked at the woman standing across the counter from him like she'd just asked to see the launch codes for a nuclear submarine. Ma'am, that's federal property. I can't just pull up airport security footage because you're asking. I am the president of a homeowners association, she said, straightening the blazer she absolutely did not need to be wearing at 6 in the morning at an airport. I have experience reviewing surveillance for violations. I know how to conduct myself professionally around sensitive footage. This isn't your neighborhood's Ring camera network, ma'am. It should operate under the same principle. Transparency. Accountability. Standards. Behind her, a line of increasingly tired, increasingly irritated passengers watched this exchange with the specific blend of horror and fascination you only get when you're trapped somewhere and someone else is making it worse for everyone. A stroller squeaked. A businessman sighed loud enough to be heard 3 counters down. Somewhere, a baby began to cry, as if sensing the chaos about to unfold. Nobody in that line had any idea that in less than 2 hours, this woman, Deborah Hensley, HOA president of Willow Creek Estates, self-declared guardian of community standards, would be led out of the terminal in handcuffs. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's back up. Hey everyone, welcome back. If this is your first time here, I tell true, wild, and deeply satisfying karma stories, and if you watched my last video about the HOA president who tried to confiscate my travel pillow at airport security, you already know exactly who Deborah Hensley is. Well, she's back. And this time, it's not about a pillow. This time, Deborah decided that federal airport security operated under HOA jurisdiction, and let's just say the consequences were significantly more serious than missing a flight to Cleveland. This is the story of how one woman's obsession with reviewing footage led to her literally being arrested in an airport terminal, in front of a crowd of stunned passengers, and how the whole thing started with something so small, so laughably minor, that nobody could have predicted where it would end. Stick around till the end, because the moment she got put in handcuffs is honestly one of the most satisfying things I've ever watched happen to another human being. Let's get into it. After the whole travel pillow disaster, things in Willow Creek Estates had actually calmed down. Deborah had been voted out as HOA president, Carl had stepped back in as interim leader, and for about 2 months, the neighborhood felt like it had gone back to normal. People mowed their lawns without fear. Wind chimes chimed freely. My flamingos, yes, plural now, stood proudly on my porch, sunglasses and all, completely unbothered. I had a work trip coming up. Nothing fancy, just a 3-day conference for freelance designers happening in another state. I'd booked an early morning flight, packed the night before, and even set 2 alarms because I am, historically, not a morning person. I got to the airport with plenty of time to spare, grabbed a coffee, and settled into the security line, feeling genuinely relaxed for the first time in months. No drama. No flamingos. No pillows. Just a quiet Tuesday morning flight. I should have known better than to feel that at peace, because as I glanced a few people ahead in line, I spotted a familiar blazer. A familiar binder, slightly thicker than before, tucked under one arm. A familiar voice, already mid-complaint to absolutely no one in particular. Deborah Hensley was standing 4 people ahead of me in the security line, and judging by the tone of her voice, she had already found something to be upset about before we'd even reached the X-ray machines. Some people you just can't escape. Apparently Deborah was one of them, and apparently the universe had decided we needed to be on another flight together. For those who missed the last video, let me properly reintroduce you to Deborah, because in the 2 months since the pillow incident, she had, somehow, gotten worse. After being voted out as HOA president, Deborah did not go quietly. She did not take up gardening or join a book club or find a new hobby to redirect all that misplaced authority. Instead, she formed what she called a Community Standards Watch Group, an unofficial, entirely self-appointed committee that met in her garage every Thursday to discuss violations she felt Carl, the actual sitting president, was too soft to enforce. She started a blog. She started a newsletter that nobody subscribed to but that somehow ended up in everyone's mailbox anyway. She once left a laminated notice on a stranger's car in the grocery store parking lot because the car was, in her words, parked at an angle inconsistent with community harmony, despite that parking lot having absolutely nothing to do with Willow Creek Estates. Deborah had, in essence, taken her entire identity and doubled down on it after losing her position, the way some people respond to being told no by becoming louder rather than reconsidering. So when I saw her 4 people ahead of me in the security line, already gesturing at a TSA agent with the same intensity she once reserved for garden gnome violations, I felt a very specific, very familiar dread settle into my stomach. Whatever was about to happen, I knew it was going to be a lot. By the time I got close enough to hear what was happening, Deborah had already worked herself into a full complaint. "I am telling you," she said to the TSA agent, "that man went through the scanner ahead of me, and he was carrying a bag that should have been flagged. I saw it myself. Irregular shape. Suspicious bulges. I want it rescreened." The TSA agent, a younger guy who looked like he'd already had a very long morning despite it being barely 7 a.m., glanced at his colleague with the specific expression of someone silently asking for backup. "Ma'am, our scanners flag items automatically. If it didn't get flagged, it's because it didn't need to be. I have experience identifying irregularities," Deborah said. "I ran a homeowners association for 3 years. I know what suspicious looks like. This isn't a homeowners association, ma'am. It should function with the same level of scrutiny," she said, and honestly, at this point, I could have mouthed the words along with her, because it was basically the exact same sentence structure as the pillow incident 2 months earlier. The man she'd accused, an older gentleman with a rolling suitcase and a look of pure bewilderment, just stood there, blinking, as security calmly rescreened his bag anyway, mostly just to get Deborah to stop talking. Predictably, it contained nothing more suspicious than a neatly folded cardigan, a paperback novel, and a bag of pretzels. "See," the agent said. "Nothing. That doesn't mean nothing happened," Deborah said. "It means whatever happened isn't in that bag anymore." The gentleman looked personally offended. The agent looked exhausted. And I, standing several places back, could already feel that this was just the opening act of something much bigger. I finally made it through security about 15 minutes later, found my gate, and settled in with my coffee, trying to enjoy what remained of my peaceful morning. I noticed Deborah a few rows down, still visibly agitated, flipping through her binder like she was preparing testimony for a congressional hearing. About 20 minutes before boarding, things started to get strange. A woman near the gate counter suddenly realized her boarding pass, which she swore she'd had in her hand moments earlier, had disappeared. She dug through her purse, her jacket pockets, even asked the people sitting near her if it had somehow fallen, but it was nowhere to be found. She had to ask the gate agent to reprint it, visibly flustered. Then a man traveling with a young child realized his phone, which he'd set down on the seat next to him while helping his daughter with her shoes, was missing. He'd only looked away for maybe 30 seconds. Then, and this is the part that made my stomach drop, I glanced down at my own bag and realized my boarding pass, which I'd tucked into the outer pocket for easy access, was gone too. I hadn't moved from my seat. I hadn't set my bag down anywhere. The only person who had walked past me in the last few minutes, moving slower than a normal pace, glancing down at people's bags and belongings along the way, binder tucked under one arm like she was casually doing rounds, was Deborah. I didn't want to jump to conclusions again, not after the pillow situation, but the pattern was uncomfortably familiar. Multiple people at the same gate, missing personal items, within minutes of each other, and Deborah conveniently wandering the exact same area the entire time. Something didn't add up, and I had a strong suspicion I already knew who could explain it. This time, I wasn't going to just quietly ask around and hope for the best. I'd learned my lesson from the pillow incident. If Deborah was doing what I thought she was doing, I wanted actual proof before anyone said a single word to her. Step 1, I quietly gathered the other affected passengers, the woman with the missing boarding pass, the man with the missing phone, and asked if anyone remembered seeing the same woman near their seats. All three of us, independently, described the exact same blazer, the exact same binder, the exact same slow, deliberate walking pattern. Step 2. I flagged down the gate agent and explained that multiple passengers at this specific gate had lost personal items within the same short window of time, and asked whether gate area security cameras existed. She confirmed they did, and said she'd loop in airport security given the pattern. Step 3, and this is the part that turned out to matter most, I set a small, deliberate trap. I made a show of setting my phone down on the empty seat beside me, loudly announcing to no one in particular that I was just going to grab a snack real quick, and then walked exactly far enough away to watch from a distance without being obvious about it, phone secretly still in my pocket the entire time. The one on the seat was a decoy, an old cracked phone I kept in my bag for exactly this kind of situation. I watched Deborah's binder-carrying stroll bring her directly past that seat less than 90 seconds later. She paused, glanced around, and in one smooth, practiced motion, the decoy phone disappeared into the side pocket of her tote bag. Step 4, I immediately flagged down airport security, who had, fortunately, already been alerted by the gate agent and had a camera trained on that exact seating area the entire time. They didn't need me to explain much after that. The footage had already caught everything. Airport security approached Deborah with the same calm, practiced energy I remembered from the pillow incident, though this time there were 2 officers instead of 1. "Ma'am, we need you to open your bag." "On what grounds?" Deborah asked, immediately shifting into what I now recognized as her default defensive posture, chin up, binder clutched tighter, voice sharpening into something that sounded almost rehearsed. "We have footage of you removing items from other passengers' seating areas within the last 20 minutes. "I was conducting an informal community safety check," Deborah said. "As a former HOA president, I have experience identifying unattended items that pose security risks." "This isn't a homeowners association," one of the officers said, and I swear, at this point, half the gate area, myself very much included, mouthed the words along with him. "It should function with the same standards of vigilance," Deborah replied, and honestly, her consistency was almost impressive at this point. When she finally opened her bag, out came the boarding pass, the phone belonging to the father with the young daughter, and my decoy phone, still sitting exactly where she'd placed it, screen cracked and all. "These items were unattended," Deborah said, her voice climbing in both pitch and volume. "I was simply safeguarding them until their owners could be properly located." "You didn't announce that you'd taken anything," the gate agent pointed out. "You didn't turn anything in. You put them in your bag and kept walking." "I intended to submit a formal report," Deborah said. "To who?" I asked, unable to help myself. "There's no HOA at this airport, Deborah." The look she gave me in that moment could have curdled milk from across the room. By now, the entire gate area had become an audience, exactly like last time, except this crowd seemed even more invested, probably because word had already started spreading that this was the Pillow Lady from a viral video a few months back. A few people were even openly filming with captions already forming in their heads, judging by the way they were narrating quietly to each other. "Ma'am," one officer said, holding up my cracked decoy phone, "can you explain why this was in your possession?" "I already explained. Safeguarding." "You watched her set it down and waited for her to leave," the officer said. "That's not safeguarding. That's theft." "I have never stolen anything in my life," Deborah said, her voice rising to a pitch that made a nearby toddler start crying in sympathy. "I have spent years protecting community standards, keeping neighborhoods safe from disorder, and this is the thanks I get? Public humiliation." "Ma'am, we haven't done anything except ask you to open your bag," the officer said, remaining impressively calm. The father whose phone had gone missing stepped forward, his daughter's small hand still in his. "That's my phone. I have pictures of my daughter's first day of school on there. You just took it and kept walking like it was nothing." "I would have returned it," Deborah said. "When?" the woman with the missing boarding pass asked. "After you finished lecturing everyone about visual clutter." Someone in the crowd laughed loudly enough that Deborah actually flinched. Another passenger, an older woman near the front, called out, "Ma'am, you are not the HOA of this airport," which got an actual round of applause from at least a dozen strangers. Deborah, cornered, red-faced, and clearly out of prepared statements, did what people like her tend to do when they run out of road. She went on the attack. "This is a coordinated attack," Deborah announced, spinning to face the crowd like she was addressing a jury. "I recognize this woman from a previous incident," she pointed directly at me, "and I believe she has orchestrated this entire situation to publicly discredit me, likely in retaliation for enforcing appropriate community standards in our shared neighborhood." "Deborah, we're not even in the same state as our neighborhood," I said, genuinely starting to lose count of how many times I'd had to say some version of that sentence to this woman. "Jurisdiction," she said, "is a state of mind." "You said that exact sentence last time too," I said, and the crowd, somehow, found this even funnier than the actual theft accusation. Deborah, undeterred, turned back to the officers. "I demand to see the security footage myself. All of it. Every angle. I have a right to review evidence before any accusations are formalized." "Ma'am, that's not how this works," one officer said. "You don't get to review federal security footage because you're the one being accused." "I built an entire career on reviewing footage," Deborah said. "I know how to interpret surveillance objectively." "This isn't your neighborhood's camera system," the officer repeated, with the exact same weary patience the TSA agent had shown earlier that morning. "It should operate under the same principle," Deborah said, and I swear, at that exact moment, I watched something shift in both officers' expressions, the specific look of two professionals who have officially run out of patience for a very specific kind of person. "Ma'am," the first officer said, continuing to demand access to federal security systems, "combined with the footage we already have of you removing multiple passengers' belongings, means we're no longer just talking about a simple item recovery." Deborah opened her mouth to respond, and for possibly the first time in her entire HOA career, she seemed to genuinely, finally understand that she was in real trouble. The officers explained, calmly and clearly, that theft of personal property inside a federal airport facility was not a matter that could be settled with a stern lecture and a promise to submit a formal report later. Between the cracked decoy phone, the father's phone, and the boarding pass, plus witness statements from 3 separate passengers and clear video footage, Deborah was placed under arrest right there at the gate. I want to be very clear about how surreal this moment was. The gate agent had paused all boarding announcements. The entire waiting area had gone completely silent except for the low murmur of dozens of people recording on their phones. Deborah, blazer still perfectly pressed, binder still tucked under one arm as if it might somehow serve as a legal defense, was read her rights and led away in handcuffs, her voice echoing behind her the entire way down the concourse. "This is a violation of due process. I want my binder logged as evidence. I have documentation." The officers, to their enormous credit, did not react to a single word of it. One of them simply said, "Ma'am, walk," with the exact tired authority of someone who has genuinely seen everything an airport can produce. As they disappeared around the corner toward airport police, the entire gate area erupted into a mixture of stunned silence and scattered applause, followed almost immediately by boarding finally resuming, because apparently even dramatic arrests can't hold up a flight schedule forever. The father got his phone back, pictures of his daughter's first day of school fully intact. The woman got her reprinted boarding pass. My decoy phone, cracked screen and all, was returned to me by an officer who couldn't quite hide a small smile as he handed it over. "Nice trap," he said quietly. "Thank you," I said. "I learned from experience." By the time I landed for my conference, the video was already everywhere. Someone had captured the entire thing, the accusation, the confrontation, the arrest, all of it, and it had made its way from a stranger's phone straight into the Willow Creek Estates community Facebook group within hours, exactly like last time, except this time the reaction was even bigger. Carl commented almost immediately, "I would like to formally state that this behavior was in no way endorsed, sanctioned, or predicted by current HOA leadership, though I cannot say I'm entirely surprised." Several neighbors who'd previously been part of Deborah's short-lived Community Standards Watch group quietly announced they were stepping away from it, with one neighbor commenting simply, "Yeah, I'm out," followed by a laughing emoji that somehow felt like it summarized the entire situation perfectly. The elderly couple next door sent me a card in the mail, of all things, thanking me for handling that Hensley business with such grace, which felt both incredibly sweet and slightly formal for a situation that had ended in a felony theft arrest. Deborah, it turned out, faced formal theft charges, and given the pattern of behavior, multiple witnesses, video evidence, and apparently a prior complaint on file from her own former HOA board regarding unauthorized confiscation of community property, the case moved forward fairly quickly. She avoided serious jail time in the end, largely due to it being a first formal offense, but was sentenced to community service, a fine, and a formal record that will likely follow her for a long time. The Community Standards Watch group quietly dissolved within a week. Nobody showed up to the next Thursday garage meeting except Deborah herself, sitting alone with her binder, which is somehow both the saddest and most fitting ending I could have possibly imagined for her. Here's what stuck with me most after everything settled down. Deborah wasn't a cartoonishly evil villain. She was something a lot more common, and honestly a lot more relatable as a cautionary tale, someone who found a small amount of power, decided that power defined her entire identity, and then couldn't let go of it even when every single sign told her to stop. She didn't lose because someone outsmarted her with some elaborate scheme. She lost because she genuinely could not stop applying rules that only ever existed in her own head, in places where those rules were never real to begin with. There's a version of this story where Deborah simply walks away after being voted out, finds a new hobby, and lives a perfectly normal, quiet life. Instead, she doubled down, convinced that losing her position meant she needed to prove her authority even louder, in bigger and bigger spaces, until eventually those spaces included federal airport security and, ultimately, a pair of handcuffs. Authority that isn't actually yours doesn't become real just because you insist on it loudly enough. And rules that only exist to make you feel powerful, rather than to actually protect anyone, tend to catch up with you eventually, sometimes in your own neighborhood, and sometimes, apparently, at gate C22. So that's the story of how a stolen decoy phone, 3 fed-up passengers, and 1 seriously overconfident former HOA president ended with handcuffs instead of a boarding pass. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Deborah ever actually believed her own authority followed her everywhere, or do you think some small part of her knew exactly what she was doing the whole time? Let me know in the comments, and if you've got your own story about someone who couldn't let go of a little bit of power, I want to hear that too. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more karma stories, and I'll see you in the next one.